Everybody for coming. Well, it looks like it's time to prepare for another bumpy ride, starting in a little bit more than a month.
Yeah.
But the folks at Peace Action, both right here in San Mateo County and in Silver Spring, Maryland, where the national office is, and all over the country or in affiliates in various states and here and there and around the country, are going to continue to resist and to organize for peace and justice. And the fact that you're here with us today, you guys, all of you, would indicate that you are going to do some of that work as well. And we have our certainly we have our work cut out for us. And to start us off on a discussion about what that work might look like, at least in the short term and hopefully beyond, our guest tonight or today, this afternoon, is Kevin Martin, who is the president of Peace Action. Kevin has been part of the Peace Action Brain Trust since 2001. Before that, he was the director of Project Abolition, whose were, of course, centered on nuclear disarmament. And he also spent quite a bit of time before that as the director of Illinois Peace Action. So Kevin is a veteran of these efforts. He's also written quite a number of op-eds and articles for national publications and done interviews on various progressive and mainstream electronic media. So I thank you very much, Kevin, for coming on to speak with us today.
Thank you very much, Ron. And I hope everyone is enjoying the interregnum before the recrudescence. And if you want to impress people with your vocabulary and maybe shake them out of whatever doldrums they're in, those are two good words. And I actually think Trump, rather than calling him president, we should just call him recrudescent. And if you don't know what that word means, it means the return of something horrible after a time of reprieve. So um,
Recrudescent.
he's the recrudescent.
Jeez.
So before we get to that, we are in this interregnum for a period, and I do think it's important to sort of continue the work we're doing, but also rest and recover and gird for what's going to come our way early next year. I want to acknowledge, though, before we do that, some very important work that has been done this year on a lot of our issues, but particularly on the genocide, the slaughter in Gaza. And I know Ron knows a fair bit about this from being on the National Peace Action Board, but also from organizing work that he and others have been doing in California. Excuse me. Um, Peace Action, has worked on Israel and Palestine issues for a long time, but not usually as one of our top priorities. But for the last year or over a year since the October 7th attacks by Hamas, we've just seen that we've really had to focus on that work. And so, in addition to Peace Action's grassroots network around the country, we have played a leading role in convening an ad hoc uh, network that I know some of you, including Mike, have been a part of as well, Ceasefire Now Grassroots Network. And working for a ceasefire and other pieces of legislation or other ways to work to change US policy. And particularly just recently on the joint resolution of disapproval that was voted on in the Senate. And the timing was very difficult. It was 2 weeks after the election. We didn't have a whole lot of time to organize for it. But we had folks in 30 states that came together with pretty impressive local coalitions, broad coalitions, not just peace and human rights groups, a lot of Arab American, Muslim American, Iranian American groups, faith, some labor. And we had 30 coalitions working to lobby their senators on supporting Bernie Sanders, his joint resolutions of disapproval to stop certain weapons sales, weapons transfers to Israel. And I've been doing this work for a long time. And I think not just on that vote, but all year long, the work that we've been doing to promote a ceasefire and to stop US weapons transfers to Israel is some of the absolute best organizing I've seen in nearly 40 years with the organization. I think you'd have to go back to the mobilization against the second Iraq war, maybe, to have experienced such an impressive grassroots movement. And yet we only got 19 senators to vote right. And neither of the California senators, which I really can't understand, particularly Senator Butler. I don't know what she would have had to lose in doing the right thing. I won't speculate. Maybe she wants to be in higher office and thought she could get hurt by that. I have no idea. But the point is, I think we need to understand when we are engaged in really impressive organizing and outreach and bringing new people into our movement. I've been particularly impressed with this larger grassroots network about particularly young people of color and particularly Arab American, Muslim American, Palestinian American women who were among the top leaders of all of these coalitions around the country and also nationally. So I think it's important to recognize when we are engaged in impressive organizing, but also to acknowledge the difficult forces that we're up against. And of course, what we've seen during the Biden administration, unfortunately, not much in the way after his first few months in office of responding to our agenda, shall we say. The Pentagon budget keeps going up, weapons sales continuing to go up, nuclear weapons programs metastasizing. There is one thing, though, that late in the session here, and I can't say for sure it's going to bear fruit, but this is an issue we've worked on for a long time. Senator Markey from Massachusetts and Representative Lieu from California have a letter that they have sent to President Biden asking him to declare that the United States no longer would have a policy of sole authority for the president to launch a nuclear first strike, that it would instead require a vote of Congress. Now, there's been a bill on this for a while. It never went very far, I don't believe. But Biden could do that before he left office. He could declare that. Now, would Trump follow that? Would the new Congress follow that? That's another question. But it would be an important step that could be done. So when Ron and I talked about having this meeting tonight, we talked about somewhat forecasting what might be the challenges we're up against. And I've done a few of these now with a few other Peace Action affiliates. And I have to say, I don't know that I have any better crystal ball than anybody else does in terms of what the recrudescent president and the white male patriarchal Congress that wants to turn back the clock on all kinds of rights for people in this country and around the world. I can't really say that I have the best crystal ball. However, there is a saying about when fascists, or in this case, I would say wannabe fascists, because I don't actually want to give him that much credit, tell you what they're going to do, you should pay attention and take them seriously. So things like Project 2025 and other awful ideas that they've been putting out there, and also just looking at some of the appointments that he's been making. It was great to see Matt Gaetz go down, but this is how arrogant or maybe even somewhat disorganized Trump is. They hadn't even been doing FBI normal vetting of some of their candidates. This guy, what's his name, Hegseth, to be the Department of Defense. Are you kidding me? So I think we have some chances to defeat some of those. It won't just be Gaetz, but a lot of them are going to get through, unfortunately. Now, one of the things that we're really going to have to be paying attention to, and I heard on NPR today that they're saying that the changed nature in the region, in the Middle East or SWANA, Southwest Asia, North Africa, it makes the prospects of the possibility of a ceasefire finally more possible before the end of the month. And they're saying that both Israel and Hamas now understand the changed nature and that both have an interest. I am not, going to put a lot of money on that. And part of this was Jake Sullivan's happy talk from the White House. I'm sure that he and the Biden administration would like to have an achievement before they leave office. But we have to be very concerned about what Trump and Netanyahu might be cooking up. Netanyahu is thrilled that Trump is back in office. And I believe he was the second person that called Trump to congratulate him after the election. The first was Viktor Orban. So what does that tell you right there in terms of who was happy that Trump got elected? But early next year, we thought about doing it this week, but we decided we wanted to put it off. So this larger grassroots network that we've been convening on Gaza, we're going to do a Zoom early in the year. So you'll see the announcement about that, if not before the end of this year, early next year, and we'll do it before the inauguration of Trump. And we want to look at not just what we have to do in terms of Gaza and the West Bank. Things are very bad in the West Bank as well, even though it hasn't gotten nearly as much attention. But also, what are the threats regarding Syria, Iran, Lebanon, Sudan, possibly Yemen again, hopefully not. So we're going to take a fairly comprehensive look at what the changed nature of the region might be and what we might need to focus on. So I want to invite all of you. I'm sure at least Mike and Ron will see that, and I hope you'll spread that around to people for early next year. Now, the Pentagon budget is interesting because some people think with this Elon Musk, who I can't even say his name with a straight face, and Vivek Ramaswamy, this, what is it, Department of Government Efficiency, and they want to cut spending. Well, the big place that they should be looking at is the Pentagon, of course. And there actually have been a few good things that Trump has said. Not that I credit Trump with any consistency on anything other than being a disaster. But he has said some things about, oh, there's too many warmongers and the weapons contractors making too much money, et cetera, et cetera. So there's at least an opening for us to push on that. Now, do I expect we're going to see any major cuts in the Pentagon budget? No, but I do think there's at least a chance to hoist them on their own petard if they start trying to cut everything else. I know people who are really afraid for all kinds of jobs, government workers, NIH funding could be cut, which could decimate research, but also, of course, the threats regarding immigration and what's going to happen to our food prices, what's going to happen to manufacturing. It's not all immigrants just doing farm labor. There's a lot of manufacturing jobs as well. So, well, yes, and cutting IRS funding, which that's another thing we're going to have to worry about, is this possible bill to give, well, it is a bill, to give the Treasury Secretary expedited powers to go after nonprofits that they don't like. And they are particularly talking about pro-Palestinian nonprofits. But it could be anybody who crosses Trump or who Trump doesn't like. So we really have to try to defeat that. They actually passed it in the House. Chuck Schumer is not bringing it up in the Senate, I don't think, this week before they adjourn, but it could very well come back early next year. So I'm glad that came up. Now, on nuclear disarmament issues, it's very interesting because Trump, of course, has sometimes, well, he's been all over the map. He did say, and I just saw this today, in a very good letter that the Warheads to Windmills Coalition that we're part of, that works for supporting nuclear disarmament and the TPNW, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, and to put the money towards the green economy, towards transitioning our energy system. That they have a very good letter that they're working on to Trump that they want to deliver to him before his inauguration. And I hadn't paid attention to this because I avoid Trump and Fox News as much as I can. But he actually said to Sean Hannity on Fox News that nuclear weapons are our #1 problem. Now, on the other hand, in the past, he threatened fire and fury to nuke North Korea. And he also has said, why do we have all these nuclear weapons if we can't use them? So again, he's all over the map. But again, if you look at the possibilities where you might want to cut money, nuclear weapons programs would be one of the best ones to target, especially the Sentinel, the new ICBM program. Although, if you look at Project 2025, there's all kinds of scary stuff in there, including let's start nuclear testing again, which the United States has not done full-scale nuclear testing since 1994. We've done the so-called subcritical tests and, of course, the missile tests. But anyway, we're going to have to be looking for how do we promote our proactive agenda on nuclear disarmament, all the things that we've worked for a long time, but then also playing defense against what could be some horrible, horrible things, including streamlining some of the awful procedures that would make it easier to spend more money on nukes with less oversight, which is not what we need. We need more oversight, and increasing plutonium pit production, possibly deploying more warheads above the New START treaty limits. There's a long list of awful stuff that Christopher Miller, who served as a Pentagon chief for a while under Trump and other former folks that have put out there. And I don't recommend you read the whole 900 pages of Project 2025. I haven't, but I have read excerpts of it that have to do with Pentagon spending and nuclear weapons, and it's very frightening. And we are going to have to be on our guard for all of that. And then, as I mentioned, other flashpoints with China, with North Korea, Syria, Iran, Sudan, Yemen, who knows? So we're going to certainly be on our toes. And in addition to the Zoom I was talking about of looking at the Middle East as a region and doing that with our grassroots Ceasefire Now coalition, we're also talking about doing a Zoom just for peace action supporters about our agenda and how we fight back against whatever lunacy Trump puts out there. And again, early on, I think we do have some ability to possibly stop some of these horrible appointments. But the last thing I want to say is something that I think it could resonate very well with all of you and with a lot of people, even if they're not necessarily peace activists, but are concerned about other issues and other attacks on trans people, on women's reproductive rights, on immigrants, and the whole threat that Trump and the MAG agenda is putting out there against us. And this is something I came up with a little while ago, and you don't have to like this shorthand if you don't, but I call it blue oases. And I don't like blue versus red normally because there's red parts of California and there's red parts of Maryland and there's blue parts of Texas, right? And we need to support people who are working for peace and social justice wherever they are. We can't just write off whole states. My original home state of Pennsylvania, I'm livid that they voted for Trump again. But doesn't mean I'm not going to work with my colleagues. My family still, a lot of them live in Pennsylvania. So the idea of blue oases, and the reason I like to use blue in this content is it's a political demand. So on the one hand, it can be looked at things like sanctuary cities, where cities declared, and this was under Trump, that they would not participate or help ICE and other raids against immigrants. You could look at sanctuary cities, and we're going to have to do this in terms of abortion rights, in terms of immigrants, in terms of protecting trans kids and students and whatnot. But that can also be at the individual level in terms of building material aid and solidarity and asking who are the people that are most targeted in our communities and how do we support them? And some Democratic politicians are already on this. I just heard the tail end earlier today of an NPR report that you guys might know more about, that I guess Governor Newsom has empowered the Attorney General to set up a $25 million fund to sue Trump if he is doing illegal stuff that are going to harm Californians. And here in Maryland, where I live, we have a pretty progressive young African-American governor, Wes Moore, who the week that Trump was elected, held a press conference and a cabinet meeting saying, we're going to protect Marylanders from the MAG agenda and from Trump. Now, that's tough in Maryland, even more so than a lot of other states, because of all the federal workers and federal departments and whatnot in Maryland. And so he has said the right things about, well, if Trump wants to invest in infrastructure and we have to rebuild the Key Bridge, the bridge over the river that was knocked over, and there are other, possible interests. But he was clear in coming out and saying, we are going to protect Maryland. And he even said that we've already stress tested this. Now, I don't know exactly what that meant. He didn't go into detail, but this is the week of the election. So there already are progressive politicians who understand this need to protect their citizens, whether the city, county, neighborhood level, whatever it is, from the depredations of the MAG agenda. So we need to press that on our senators, our congresspeople, our governors, our city council, our county commissioners, et cetera, but also individually. We can act in solidarity, build mutual aid support networks, do whatever we can to protect the people in our communities. And I think of it as a way of building, in the face of these threats, the beloved community that Martin Luther King and others have talked about for a long time. And to me, that doesn't have to have a religious connotation necessarily. It has to do with communities where we respect and uphold the rights of everyone. So I don't know when we're going to get any sleep. That's quite a lot of an agenda, but I hope these are things that resonate with you, and I'm glad to take any questions or comments you have. And I just want to thank all of you for all the great work that you do.
Thank you much, Kevin. And I guess it's thing about the Blue Oasis. It's another thing that we can do. Way back in the early days of the nuclear weapons freeze, there was an expression of think globally, act locally, and I think that maybe resonates with that. Looking at state level things that um, could also be, down to the local level. And so we find that important. And so, I'm not sure what to think about what Trump says, that some of the things that he said. He tells you, and I think I believe a lot of what he says, and I'm going to continue, and it's probably best. But you never know because he did lie 30 something thousand times and during his first term and all. So we'll open up for comments, questions and whatever. Um, Most of you probably know how to do this, but just in case, you want to go down to the React icon at the bottom of your screen underneath all of our squares and click it, and you'll see a raise hand icon. Um, or a raise hand, thing. Then and you click that, and your hand will come up, much like Jeannie has there on in the top left. So we will begin with Jeannie and then go to Dawn. And you'll have to mute yourself. There you
Okay.
go.
Hi, Kevin. I just wanted to say that talking about what we can do locally, when Trump was president last time, he had targeted San Francisco because we were a sanctuary city of wanting to come out here. And so one thing that we did then, but it's got to be different this time, it was a really great plan and it worked well then, is that a hotline was set up so that anyone who was an immigrant who thought they saw the white van of ICE pull up in their neighborhood, or they heard a raid going on next door or something, they could call this emergency number. There were people there that spoke different languages, and they could say what they saw happening. And then a lot of us were trained all around the city to be observers, and they'd let those of us know in that section of the city, and we would rush to that area. And we were trained not to interfere, but to, take pictures, take notes, observe everything, and whoever, because so often when those ICE raids happened, illegal, they did things illegally. They didn't follow the rules. They maybe have a permit to get one certain person, and they'd round up anybody they saw or whatever. So anyhow, that I think was a good deterrent last time he was president. But I'm not sure this time. I think it's got to be something sort of different that to really help protect them, because I don't think Trump's going to care about the law. And so anyhow, I just wanted to throw that out as something we did last time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I would interject that one thing that we've talked about is the prospect of the military being used to help deport people, whether they're in line for deportation or not, whatever their criteria they use. And so that may be a place where peace action may have something to say, at least, and some weighing in to do, because we do concern ourselves with military type affairs.
We certainly
Um,
will oppose that, no question.
Oh yeah. And so, Dawn.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, so Trump has said some, positive things about ending the war in Ukraine, and he has said some truths about U.S. overseas militarism. He tried to withdraw U.S. troops from Syria, but the Pentagon or the other people in D.C. wouldn't let him do it, which is sort of interesting. But yeah, you can't trust Trump. So I don't put much faith in Trump for sure. But I do want to point out that, Jeffrey Sachs often appears like with Tucker Carlson and with Judge Napolitano, and it seems like the right-wing media is a lot more open to hearing anti-war views than the left, than the mainstream left is. I mean, I get, so there, yeah, I guess the mainstream, like Wall Street Journal wouldn't be open to it. But my point is that like the MAGA media, in some ways, they're more open to hearing things like Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal and I said Jeffrey Sachs very often appear with Tucker Carlson, Judge Napolitano. And so although Tucker is a nutcase in some ways, he does say some things and Jeffrey Sachs, says that a lot that he's in contact with people from the Trump administration. And he said half of them know about Ukraine and how the US provoked that war. So I guess the question, I'm just asking questions, what you think about, somehow allying with people like anti-libertarians or people at antiwar.com who are very, very much libertarians and, some MAGA people are anti-war that although they're unpleasant in many ways, they may be useful for us. That's my point.
I'm gonna leave this.
Yeah, I think in terms of looking at the policy rather than who we're going to align with, I think there is going to be a big problem if Trump and Republican leaders get together and basically try to arm twist Zelensky, if that's the way you want to put it, by saying, look, we can't continue sending weapons. They kind of threatened that under Biden, and then they backed off. And of course, it was part of this larger omnibus funding. But I expect that will come back. And I think that is going to raise a lot of issues for a lot of people, even people who are peace activists and don't want weapons being transferred anywhere, don't want to see Russia rewarded for its illegal invasion. And then you're telling Ukraine what they should or shouldn't accept in terms of violation of their sovereignty and their territory. However, it could get worse. Ukraine could be in a much worse situation in 6 months or a year. So I don't think there's an easy resolution to this. And there are some peace activists who have been kind of split on this issue. Trump said something about he'll end the war before he even gets in office. I don't know how in the world he's going to do that. So again, I think this is going to be a very difficult issue that we're going to have to keep our eye on. And I don't have an easy solution to this, and I don't think anybody else does either. In terms of who we align with, I'm okay and have certainly worked in the past with libertarian and genuine anti-war folks, but we are going to be in a whose side are you on moment. And I think it's most important for us to ally with people of color, with trans people, with immigrants, with the people that are going to be most under attack from these wannabe fascists. Now, if some libertarians are with us on ending certain wars or cutting Pentagon spending or ending certain weapon system, that's fine. But overall, I want to be on the side of the people that are struggling for social justice overall.
Great. Stephen, you're next. But you're muted.
I just wanted to say that I really agreed with what Don said with his take. I've been listening to those people a lot, and they make a lot of sense to me. Jeffrey Sachs in particular.
Okay, we get input from all
and
kinds of different places.
And I want to point out that Jeffrey Sachs certainly doesn't agree with a lot of things that Tucker Carlson says. But my point isn't that the Tucker Carlson or the libertarians are good. I mean, I disagree with most of what they say. My main point is that that's the only place that Jeffrey Sachs can get coverage. The New York Times won't publish him. In New York, the New Yorker had an article about Jeffrey Sachs, but it was an attack piece mostly. And from what Kevin I don't condone Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but I know the U.S. was far, far from innocent in what they did. The U.S. launched the coup there in 2014 and armed far-right militias, etc.
A lot of controversy there. I would say U.S. and Western post-Cold War triumphalism and isolating Russia was a huge historical mistake. I actually went to Russia in 1997 and I loved it. I loved the people, the culture, the architecture, the food, the history, the literature. I learned to speak Russian a little bit. And that was a time, 97, that was on the downside of Yeltsin, but before Putin came into power. There was a fairly vibrant, small, but NGO community of peace groups and environmental groups at that time. They're mostly all gone. And, the brave Russian people who have protested the war in Ukraine but are now in jail deserve our solidarity and our support. And yes, the United States and the West, in our arrogance, it was a historical mistake to isolate Russia and basically tell Russia to eat our dirt and that we were going to be the unipolar superpower champions of the world. Of course, Russia is not going to react well to that. So I agree with the historical mistake by the US and Russia. And whether you look at NATO expansion or whatever other manifestations of that, it was a generally historical, horrible mistake.
Before I call on Mike, I'll mention, and Mike was even probably going to say this, that Jeffrey Sachs, there's a lot of interviews with him that can be found on YouTube. And I say Mike might have said that because he's always sending the board and some of us YouTube videos.
And he, to his credit, he cops to his role in destroying the Russian economy or setting up the oligarchs and the huge theft of resources from the Russian people. He takes responsibility for that. So anyway, can we please not talk about who is or isn't on Fox News or Jeffrey Sachs? I want to talk about peace action, how we mobilize, how we do our work. Thanks.
Right. Mike?
Well, I'll speak to that, mobilizing and doing our work. Media is important. And that's why actually I have sent out a lot of links to particularly it's judgenap.com. I finally had to find the best way of reaching all of his recent interviews. Because here's a guy who I probably have nothing in common with. Andrew Napolitano was a Fox News host, got kicked off because I guess he went off a little bit too much from the reservation. But the guy is war and peace and foreign policy actually decent. And I think that is part of our function, is to reach out to where we can find people who are interested in those issues. And he's definitely a go-to source. And most of his stuff is half-hour interviews, so they're bite-sized. You can get yourself a coffee or whatever and enjoy it. You just ignore the buying gold and all the other crazy stuff he's into. But the idea is he has he has Max Blumenthal, Scott Ritter, for whatever you want to think about the guy, but he's a military expert. You got to understand that. He's you got Mearsheimer, and the guy always starts with, "Oh, hello, my friend. I'm so happy you came to visit us today." I mean, it's almost comical the way he introduces everybody, but it's worth listening to. And you get good facts, good talking points. And I personally definitely recommend people subscribe. Be a subscriber to that guy, because I think he's up to 500,000 now, which is good. And he doesn't put words in people's mouths, and he seems to be in agreement with just about every individual that he has come on there. And as far as our own media, I just got word there's a chance I might get my latest letter in the LA Times today. I'll find out for sure eventually. But my idea, it's cheap, it's easy, it's fun, it's a good mental exercise. I try to get a point down to 150 words. I send it out to about 25 newspapers, BCC, because they all want to know, oh, you only sent it to me. Oh, yeah, I only sent it to you. 25 goddamn papers. I've been at Haaretz, New York Times, the Toronto Star, I don't know where the hell else, but it's free. You're not doing it. You're not spending even a phone call. So I'd recommend people get into that. I know the Progressive Democrats of America, which I work with also, and they're very active with, they call it clicktivism, which is supposed to be a pejorative, but it's actually an excellent way for people to be active. get your voice out there, talk to people. They're big on phone banks on every conceivable issue, everything from disability rights to stuff. I mean, if you got an interest, go to PDA. I guess it's .org, and a guy named Mike Fox is a natural born salesman. Reminds me of the guy with the spray on waterproofing or something. He's always like this, but it's a great way to be active and connect and learn yourself. So I mean that as far as the judgenap.com is excellent, and then YouTube generally. I haven't seen those people ever thrown off the site, so use the media where you can find it. And like I say, I've been doing letters to the editor. Christ, I Googled myself on my county paper, and I have over 200 letters over time that have been printed.
All right.
And you'd be surprised, the points you can make. And to me, it's worthwhile. It's excellent. People, people like Ron actually go to other states to help voter registration and knock on doors. And there's a million things you can do. I hate making phone calls, so Ron will make the phone calls. But the fact remains, there's a lot of outreach to be had, and it's basically free, and you can't rely on the media to be helpful. Like, I don't think I've ever been covered in my local paper. I think one time, 20 years ago, somebody actually interviewed me, but other than that, they'll basically ignore you. So
I think we can put a little more energy into press releases and things for our part. And that's something I'm hoping we can do.
Okay.
So, okay. So let's go to, did I understand this is Teresa on the square called Ocean Blue Phone?
Ocean Blue Phone.
Yes, it is. I actually wanted to bring us back to something I think that Kevin said that it is extremely important, and where I want to prioritize my energies is looking at the most affected people in this that we can foresee in the next couple of years. And right now I foresee, as people were talking about, the immigrants who are bound to be, many of our undocumented people and immigrants and even U.S. citizens who are bound to be shipped out or held in camps for a while. I see that as something that is of utmost importance, partly because it's going to affect, the lives of people. And I do agree that the U.S. military anticipated role is going to be a area where the peace action has traditionally put energy and should put energy, but also in that, and then also in some of the environmental protection as possible. Excuse me. Since I am not in a place where I can speak a lot, I'm gonna just click off to the mute.
Well, that's a good point, including, excuse me, the environmental impacts of militarism and the fact the United States, the military, is the biggest polluter and the biggest fossil fuel consumer, and the assault on any kind of green energy, green economy, Green New Deal is going to be ferocious by the MAG agenda. But also, and this is again where we can point out contradictions, the Pentagon itself has been saying for a long time now that climate chaos is driving and will continue to drive and will intensify conflict, armed conflict. And even just not too far from where I live, down in Virginia, the huge, excuse me, Norfolk Naval Base, they expect that that's going to be under threat of sea level rise and that they might have to move some of the ships at the naval base. So that's one of the places where we can again point out the terrible contradictions in their agenda.
I'm going to note something, and you are welcome to put questions in the chat. Somebody who had to go put something in, and I'm going to throw this out. And this is in the spirit of the very basic grassroots work of hounding our elected representatives. Lynn Heidekoper, who had to go, was asking if anybody knows what the new representative replacing Anna Eshoo, Sam Liccardo's stand is as far as war and peace issues. And I don't know if anybody can answer that question, but it's something for all of us to think about. And his name will find its way into action alerts that we send out very soon as he gets sworn in, which will be soon. So I actually had sent him, I tried to reach out with the idea of looking for somebody to endorse to replace Anna Eshoo last year, when the race was going on, and I didn't really hear from anybody. And so I do not know. So I'm open for anybody's input, and maybe his actions will tell us what's going on. How he votes, we'll find out.
Well, and one thing with
Yeah,
members of,
oh, go ahead.
one thing
Sorry.
with new members of Congress, I don't know anything about him or his background, but trying to meet with him or his staff early on, and develop a relationship and be a resource, that's always worth doing. And that's true for even veteran members of Congress as well, but especially for a new member of Congress, trying to establish a relationship early. I was just thinking, I hadn't thought of this before. There is sometimes what's called PEP, P-E-P, progressive except for Palestine. I think for some Democrats, there's PEM, progressive except for militarism. That maybe is something we need to be thinking about.
Never heard that.
Plant ideas in their head that this is something that needs to be thought about. And who knows, maybe he hasn't thought a lot about it. Mike, you had something else?
Yeah. No, the reading I had done on was Joe Simidian was in the race, Evan Lowe, and Liccardo. Sam Liccardo? Sam.
Yes, Sam.
But they all sounded like pretty good liberal type people. And like you say, how far out on a limb they'd ever want to go. We're just looking at our own Kevin Mullen, who's actually in most of our districts here. They're not leaders. It's actually, I think when we had Jackie Spear, who was previous to Kevin Mullen in our district, she was very good on certain issues, but just stayed kind of quiet on others. But she was really good on beating up on the Supreme Court for that Citizens United. She said, yeah, that's basically peddling our democracy to the highest bidder. And obviously it's certainly worked out that way. And it always has been to a great degree that way. But as far as who to appeal to, I was reading some of the stuff from Bernie Sanders, and basically we need to find a good message for the white working class. I mean, that's the people who we've lost, mainly due to the Terry McAuliffe era of the Clinton administration, when they just said, well, how come we can't get any of this corporate money? The unions are behind us. How come we're missing out on all this great corporate cash being thrown around to the Republicans? Ever since then, with the NAFTA, then the permitting and letting industries simply vanish over to China, whatever, we basically blew away the white working class, which was a solid. I see some hands in the air there. I see, but they basically blew away their blue wall, and they did it themselves. That's the worst part. So, we've got to find messaging that works for them. I know the young people.
What, Mike, though, I have to say, I don't think it's that simple. Now, I think you're right in terms of long-term rightward or centrist drift of the Democratic Party. I actually agree with that. I do agree with that. And the Clintonization of the party. However, if you look, and I haven't geeked out on the statistics all that much, but if you look at how the Democrats performed in the three key states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, between Clinton and then Biden and then Harris, mostly where they lost the election was lowered turnout among people of color in Philadelphia in the suburbs, Detroit in the suburbs, Milwaukee in the suburbs. If they had done better, as Biden had done, Harris would have won the election. That doesn't refute your overall point about the corporatization of the Democratic Party and having lost working class voters. So you're right about that. But if you look at the statistics from those three elections, it's fairly telling. Those are really the only places. Now, the other thing that's pretty interesting when you look at this, and you're talking about neither California senator and neither New York senator voted for the JRDs. Both Georgia senators did. And John Ossoff, who's Jewish, is taking a lot of heat for that. The one place where Harris actually did better than expected was in Atlanta and the suburbs. So some of these blue and red, expectations or historical patterns are not always what they were. But I'm very disappointed. And I think a lot of this, Biden just dropped out too late. He should have dropped out sooner, and then Harris would have had more of a chance. Not that I think Harris is great. I'm no huge fan of Harris, but I would prefer her to the other. So anyway, Mike, I wasn't refuting your overall point. The Clintonization, et cetera, the Democratic Party has been a long-term problem for sure.
I was going to say also, I take your point, Kevin, about trying to get a meeting with soon-to-be Representative Sam Liccardo. When we met with Kevin Mullen early in his tenure, we actually got him to sign on to the resolution from Representative McGovern in Massachusetts, endorsing, not using the right words, but endorsing the treaty for the prohibition of nuclear weapons. So little things like that, when you can turn people in early, and when you can jump on people early and appeal to their common sense, I think, in the case of that, because it was about nuclear weapons, that's something where an early bite of the apple would help us a lot. And I hope we can get some people from down in what is now Eshoo land and will soon be Liccardo land, to help us out with that. And
we constantly have to be looking to help recruit new leaders in Congress. And one of the things that we've really focused on is working with and helping develop relationships with the squad, quote unquote. But if you look at the state of California, we're losing Barbara Lee's voice, which has been one of the most staunch pro-peace voices. I'm hoping that she will agree to be the honorary chair of Peace Action, of National Peace Action. We want to approach her and offer that. But with her leaving, I guess Ro Khanna maybe among the California delegation is probably the best on war and peace and disarmament issues. There's probably a few others, but nobody like Barbara Lee, right? So, and that's a national issue, not just in California, that we need to develop new leaders. Are we getting, okay, we maybe have a little bit more time, Ron. What do we got here?
We always figure an hour to an hour and a half. If it's closer to an hour, that's fine too, and it just depends on who else has input or a question or something like that.
I was gonna ask if it's possible to see, because I see where Don and Stephen and Mike are coming from. I also listen to many different types of programs on YouTube. And what I mostly see is the Republican side, Trump side, willing to dialogue and cross that line to connect, because ultimately we all want peace. But even if you remain as your blue sense of like, no, they don't want peace, they want this, that, and the other, we want to focus on this, then what does that say about you as your own party? Because presently our party, I can't say we, because the last time I voted for Jill Stein, and before then I wrote in Tulsi Gabbard. I'm fine that Tulsi Gabbard is where she's at, because if she still stands for peace, that's my bottom line. I would not want to see anyone's children being recruited to go to war. I do not want to see Russia as an enemy, nor Ukraine. I want to see a world in which all children and adults can get along and speak with each other. However, from what I'm getting from you today in Peace Action, I feel as if you're insistent that the blue wall or the blue whatever, this DNC has to be adamant towards Trump. I am not a fan of Trump either, but I remain hopeful that there is a bit of peace that he wants to bring about. And so that's how I'm focusing on what it is that I'm looking at. And also with YouTube, There is this one man who is a scholar who lives in Japan, but I believe he's from Sweden. His channel is Neutrality Studies, and he just had Thomas Postal on like maybe a month ago. Postal was the one who was able to say that what happened in Syria was false. He was an MIT professor, or he still is. And he mentioned how he came here to Stanford because he and his wife are connected to Stanford, dialogued with Michael McFaul, and realized McFaul isn't like the brightest bulb in the universe, and insisted that McFaul really failed when it came to creating a space where Russia and America could dialogue. So for me, the bottom line is dialogue. And if we're not willing to dialogue just within the people in this country that hold different views, then what exactly are we doing as an organization that's looking for peace? Thanks.
Well, I agree with that, but I also don't think that people who hit you in the face need to be mollified. So you guys are talking about Fox News being more open. I used to go on Fox News a fair bit. I never got anything but grief and death threats. I don't think I swung a single person from being on Fox News, and I'm not going to waste my time, okay? Now, again, we're going to be, and it's different in San Mateo maybe than in other places, but we're going to be on a whose side are you on stance. And I just can't see that I want to spend most of my time with wannabe fascists as opposed to people of color and people of the women whose bodily autonomy is going to be attacked.
But if you immediately just put them in the category of being called fascist, then immediately you don't want to
Wannabe. That
you don't want to have you're abstracting them, and that's part of the problem. Rather than abstracting them, why not see them as human beings and make an effort to connect, make an effort to dialogue?
They're very
that's
clear
exactly the same thing that they're willing to do.
They're very clear on what their agenda is. It's not peace.
Then that means you've just already made up your mind and you're just interested in.
No, I've read their plans. I've read their plans.
Even if you read their plans,
remember
it
what
doesn't
Trump
mean that
did.
it entirely influences every single person who's read it as well. Like, look at what, for me, what's going on with Ukraine is abominable because we did that. We as not Americans, but our government did that.
No, we didn't.
1991.
No, Putin invaded Russia.
Well, it definitely looks like Biden used it as a way to money launder. And that's why, for me, it's hard to like.
Did he make Putin invade Russia? Or does Putin have any
That was something that was way Scott Horton's latest book is called Provoked. Putin was provoked, even with the 2 Minsk Accords.
You know who would laugh at you is Putin. You're denying Putin.
It doesn't matter if you're going to call me a Putin puppet or whatever. My bottom line.
No. You're denying Putin's.
I'm not denying anything.
He would laugh
All I'm
at you.
saying is the bottom line is we need to have a dialogue. And if you're going to dismiss it, what are you doing as the president of Peace Action? Where is your peace in all this? This does not make sense.
I agree with that.
Student who is focusing on peace, but when you speak, you immediately dismiss people. That's part of my problem. Is how are we going to create peace in this world if this is you as the president of Peace Action not willing to talk to people who are not willing to see the way you see things?
I did say that I have worked with libertarians who are genuinely anti-war. I have in the past, and I will continue to. I'm not going to waste my time defending fascists. When they tell me they are fascists, when they tell me they want to smash civil society, they want to take away women's rights, they want to deport people, they want to impose their will, their patriarchy, white, militarist nationalism on trans children. I'm not down with any of that. And I don't have to sit there and listen to that when that's their plan. When there are genuinely people that are open to dialogue that I don't agree with on other things, yes, we work with them.
Well, good luck.
Okay, well, let's go
Donald.
to
What you got, Donald?
Oh, okay. Hi. So just getting back, the point isn't that I said this the third time, I think. I don't like Tucker Carlson or Justin Napolitano. A lot of the stuff they said is crazy. The main point is that they are more anti-war than someone like Thom Hartmann, who is who doesn't say anti-war things, and he thinks that the US is as innocent as a newborn baby in Ukraine. Now, and so that the main point is the big problem is the Democratic Party is in some ways more pro-war than the Republican Party now. And I agree the Republican Party is crazy and that very inconsistent. But all these anti-war people can get on right-wing media. They cannot get on on mainstream.
Do you guys need to keep going over this? You've made your point about what
Nope.
you think media criticism and who does or doesn't get on, whatever. That's cool. You've made your point, but I don't think it's a great use of our time, frankly, that whether I do or don't agree with your media criticism and who gets on right-wing versus left-wing media, it's not really a great way to spend our time.
Oh, okay. Well, so anyway, just because you seem to be saying that I want to support these right-wing people. I don't want to. I'm saying we need to get left-wing media. The problem is to get left-wing media more open to us. The second point I wanted to make is from what you're saying, I think, and I agree with what Sally said. She spoke very well. You do not appreciate the extent of U.S. provocations and the nasty things.
Of course I do. Of course that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
As I said, the US and the West made a historical mistake in our post-Cold War triumphalism. Did you not hear me say that?
I did hear you say that, but
I'm against Russian militarism too. Ron, I really don't need this. So
yeah, Don, you need to. Okay, you made your point. So yeah,
criticism stuff.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Mike and kind of give him the last word, I think.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see anybody else was wanting to say anything, but yeah, that's why in my writings, I letters to the editor and stuff, you try to reach anyone who's open to being reached. And on certain topics, some people are reachable and persuadable. Fox News, you're going to have a hard time. Like I can see where when you went on Fox News, you just got grief. I mean, but you're starting with probably the least likely people to change their minds on much of anything. So I generally always try to approach things I write aimed at the person who might be on that fence, somewhat open, not totally persuaded in the opposite direction. And so I just find it's a lot easier to talk to people that way. And personally, I think you're more successful in the long run. So that's why I do like that guy, JudgeNap.com's on peace issues. It's got some great people on there. Like Jeff Sachs is always on there. Mearsheimer, always on there. So take advantage of what's out there, and they're good news sources, and you learn a good way of communicating with other people that are open, at least to any thoughts of that nature. So now I'm going to leave it at that because, yeah, I appreciate Kevin making the time for us today, and I think we all really appreciate it's getting a little later. It's what, 8:34 in New York or Maryland or wherever you are. So appreciate your time, Kevin. And anybody else have anything to say other than that? We can kind of close it up for the evening and thank everyone.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you to Kevin for being here and having to take us on with what it is that we had in mind.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Kevin, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for all the great work you do. Appreciate
I do thank you, Kevin. Thank you for bringing up good ideas. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care, Kevin. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank all of you for coming.
Bye.
Thanks, Ron.
Keep
Thanks.
on keeping on.